In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast, we are going to cover the rookies and who's rising and who has kind of fallen off or maybe hit the rookie wall. We haven't done a rookie podcast in a while. We've been focusing on the NBA, the 2023 NBA Draft. We've been focusing on the tournament, but the rookies is always a favorite amongst our listeners. Right, 1, 2. In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast, we will discuss the 2022 NBA Draft class. We will talk about the top rookies, who is rising, who has hit the rookie wall, and maybe even who is expected to have a big sophomore season next year. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, with my co-host for today, Richard Stayman, Mr. Mavs Draft. And we are going to discuss the 2022 rookie class, which is crazy that the NBA season is almost over. I feel like there's maybe 4 or 5 games for some teams, but maybe a little bit more than that. I think for the Mavs, there's only like 3 home games left, which is crazy that they might not make the playoffs. And I'm used to seeing like the media at the Mavs game, and I was obviously expecting for a deep playoff run this year. But Richard, first of all, how are you doing? And I wanted to get your opinion on which rookie has surprised you the most this season.
I've been doing okay, kind of like you hinted at. I think I was doing better before this weekend. You know, the Mavs blowing back-to-back leads, or it's not leads, they never led. Back-to-back games against the Charlotte Hornets, who are one of 4 teams right now to be eliminated from the playoffs. So that was really disappointing. The Mavs suddenly are a threat to be in the draft, which is both good and bad for me. So that's been simultaneously very interesting. I think the most recent rookie, though, kind of staying with Charlotte, that's really caught my attention, Mark Williams. That dude has been playing really, really well. One of the things I noticed, I was at the game on Friday against the Hornets, is with Mark Williams, I remember at the Combine, his standing reach, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know it was number 1 in the draft. His standing reach was ridiculously on display. I mean, it was 9'9", so he only has to jump 3 inches to touch the rim. And it was really on display. It was something where I felt like, all right, I see how he uses that reach so well at the rim on both ends. He's someone who I could see becoming a big sophomore jump next year.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember during the Combine, that's when I first started like talking to different scouts about their workouts that they had. The individual workouts with teams. And I won't mention the team, but there was a guy who was like, I put him through his workout, and he said that he was the best player that his team worked out. And he said that unfortunately the team is not going to draft him. He thought it was a mistake. And he mentioned to me that he thinks Mark Williams is going to be able to shoot threes by his sophomore season in NBA. In the games that you've watched, has he been able to show any flashes of touch?
I mean, I haven't looked for it. He's taken 0 threes, but the thing that sticks out to me is always free throw percentage. He shoots 68% from the line. It's a really low sample size still. I think it's something where I don't think it's that quick, but I do think by the end of his rookie contract, we're looking at a guy who is kind of like Jaden in that regard, where, you know, if he's trying to take a 3, it's not a terrible shot, and you're open for him doing it probably in the first or second quarter. But I just still don't want him doing it in the fourth quarter, but I do think there is real shooting touch there. I agree with that scout.
Yeah, I saw something that also said that Charlotte has like the best defensive rating in the NBA since the All-Star break, which makes me wonder, like, and I mean, we did these episodes months ago. Why wasn't he playing at the beginning of the season? Like, I thought he should have been their starter from day one.
Yeah, I mean, I think they weirdly handled his season from October to December. First of all, I thought it was weird they didn't draft Duren over him, but I think they made a fine enough decision where you're not questioning that. But yeah, it is weird that he didn't play. Charlotte is a match made in heaven, I think, for Mark Williams, something I didn't even consider. I say this as I'm wearing an Orlando Magic shirt, is Steve Clifford's a great defensive coach. I think that's a big product of him. Mark Williams has missed some time, so it's not all him, but when Mark Williams plays, that defense is electric. And I think next year when you get him from October to March, or really April, sorry, from October to April, you're going to be looking at a high-level defensive player that's going to protect the rim, not a liability on the perimeter, and he's going to be averaging probably a double-double.
Yeah, another rookie that I want to talk about who I've been wondering why he was not in the rotation early in the season is Jaden Hardy. Hardy has been really good. I don't think Kid wants to play him, but he's been kind of forced to play him in a sense. And I talked to Jaden's dad at a game last week, and I was like, the thing that I really admire about him is that he never lost confidence. Like, it's so easy for a rookie, especially being that young, to lose confidence when you don't know when you're going to play. You know, you may play 20 minutes one game, and then you may not play again for the next 2 weeks. And he has been completely the same player in a sense, just kind of like in a good way, an irrational confidence guy. Like the coach can't shake his confidence. He continues to play the same way. And when he's had minutes, he's made the most of them. And I think he should be in the rotation for the rest of the way out. Tell me your thoughts on Jaden Hardy.
Yeah, victory lap for you is very much in line, especially compared to our hot takes thread. I don't even want to say repeat what I had said last year, but I was very out on Jaden Hardy, and I was just wrong. I didn't know how to evaluate the G League Elite, or I'm sorry, Ignite properly. But with Hardy, for me, I tweeted something out Monday night about his catch and shoot versus off the dribble three numbers, and it just proves why he's such a good fit in Dallas. Catch and shoot, 38 of 91. That's 41.8% from three. Off the dribble, he's 18 of 44. That's 40.9% from three. The dude's an efficient three-point shooter. It wouldn't shock me if he's consistently in the 40% range for the rest of his career, really, from three. I mean, just flirting with that every single year, whether it's 38, 42, somewhere in between that range. Feels like it's a nice mix, and I'm happy to be wrong.
Yeah, I had talked to a scout, and I was like, man, why did Hardy fall? I said, was it intel? I like, what exactly is the reason? And he said that NBA scouts had a hard time and still do have a hard time evaluating the G League. Say it's so new. And he felt that last year teams really didn't know what to do with Hardy's offensive numbers because he was so inefficient. And they took the defensive guys because they thought they were safer. Talking about Dyson Daniels and Marjon Beauchamp. They said they thought they were safer. And he was like, mistakes were definitely made in passing up Hardy. So a question for you is, how has Hardy's success made you change your thought process regarding young scorers that may have been inefficient, or even with the G League?
Yeah, so I mean, I've read over my scouting report, and I didn't get it accurately. At the first step, I thought was a little bit subpar. It wasn't. That was something I just think I misevaluated on that. That's outright. But with the G League Elite, or I keep saying that, the G League Ignite, excuse me, they just, the system doesn't seem like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just they have talent and they run on that. And that's just not how the NBA works. And I think that threw me off a little bit. For going forward, though, I really undervalued the element of professionalism that they developed there. I think that's a big thing we've heard about, where these guys, any interview you hear it, these guys are learning to be pros rather than just professional basketball players. They're learning to actually be professionals on and off the court, which is really valuable. And I think that's why Jaden Hardy has been able to overcome that. The first 2 months he was irrelevant. They tried him out for the rotations a little bit. He was kind of bad, just no way to mask it. He was bad at defense. His scoring wasn't there. And he comes back. He goes to the Legends in the G League, comes back in January, and he has been a constant in the rotation since. And I think that's something, if he went from high school to college to the NBA, I don't know if that adjustment's that easy for him. I think he knew what he had to do, what he was getting from it, and just that off the court stuff, the development and the coaching, the stuff they have there. is really beneficial for Jaden Hardy and future G League Ignite players.
But his dad mentioned that it was part of the physicality in the G League. Not saying that the G League is like this extremely physical league, but he said that he was, a kid in a sense, playing against grown men, and the bumping and fighting through screens and all that. And he said that he was getting worn out, and it affected his shots a little bit because his arms were tired just because he was bumping, and he didn't know how to navigate screens and avoid contact. And his dad is just like, he's still the same player. Because I was asking, like, what's the difference? Because if you look at the numbers in the G League, it's like 35% last year. Then this year it's like, 29 points a game, close to like 50, 40, 90. He's like, he just got better at knowing how to, avoid contact and not being so worn out and being able to just still shoot the ball. And so I thought that was like a tremendous jump he made, because if you look at the stats from last year to this year in the G League, it's totally different. And he's actually a better player in the NBA this year than he was in the G League last year. So that 1 year of experience was like really, really, really beneficial. All right, when we return, we'll talk about Paolo Banchero, who is the odds-on favorite to win Rookie of the Year. But there's another rookie that's creeping up on him. But for now, let's talk about FanDuel, because there's no better place to get the action than FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on and sign up today and claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to the point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net in the Final Four. It's all on the app. It's safe, it's secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at the no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, second segment. This is Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman. We talked about Jaden Hardy. We talked about Mark Williams as rookies that are on the rise late in the season, but the guy that has been consistent and steady all throughout the year, Paolo Banchero, who, he should win Rookie of the Year by a landslide. I've seen some people say that somebody else may have a chance to catch him. What have you thought about Banchero's play? Because he had a rough, was it February? He had a rough February. I saw some stat. He was like 1 of 30 from 3 or something like that. And then he's totally picked it back up in March. So he hit the wall a little bit. But what are your thoughts been on Banchero?
Yeah. So first of all, it was only 10 games in February. Second, even last year, this is actually I made a very wrong decision on this, but last year in February, he shot under 40% from the field at Duke. And because of that, I dropped him down on my board. I was like, man, this could be a real red flag for Paolo. It wasn't. So for me, I'm not worried about the 33 threes. He shot 3% from 3, 1 of 33. But for me, it's just, even with that, he still averaged 17 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and half a block, half a steal. It was not the greatest efficiency, and he still got to the line. It was 37%, but from the field. But since then, he's really picked it up. In March, he's back to 20 points a game on 44% shooting. And you know what? He's shooting 36% from 3 on this like way better volume too. So I think it's an outlier. If that's a reason for him not being Rookie of the Year, it's 10 games. Like that's ridiculous.
I'm driving the Banchero bandwagon. I'm a huge fan. I had a chance to meet his father in All-Star Weekend, and I guess it was all because of all the tweets and all the pro Banchero stuff that I said last year. The funny thing that he said to me, he said, when you're, and he's talking in reference to his son, he says, when you're an athlete, if you're looking for motivation, all you have to do is go on Twitter and you can find plenty of motivation, especially during the draft process, because people are going to be arguing about you. And he had mentioned that he couldn't find, I guess there's no motivation behind my tweets because I was arguing with people all last year about how I thought Banchero was head and shoulders above the rest of the draft class, and I still feel that way. But let's talk about the guy that people think could be the runner-up. He's kind of been rising as of late. Jalen Williams, Jalen, Jalen Williams from the Oklahoma City Thunder. What have you thought about Williams?
Yeah, so I mean, for those who don't know, the reason why he's rising is he's just been phenomenal post All-Star break. His percentages are always, I mean, throughout the year, he's been over 50%. Since the All-Star break, he's at 18.5 points a game, over 5.5 rebounds, 4.4 assists, also 1.7 steals per game. And that's on 55% shooting, 45% from three, 86% from the line on good volume. So the stats are really there. He's making a run for, I would say he's been better than Banchero in this stretch, which is absolutely no knock on Paolo. That's just how good Jalen Williams has been. And also they're winning. They're winning games, but so are the Magic. I think people really dismiss that. The Magic only have a fewer wins than them. So that's something that's swept under the rug. But for Jalen Williams, it's just that consistent efficiency is always there. I think his worst month, he shot like 44% from the field. So he's just been a consistent three-level scorer. I really like what I've seen. All that to be said, he's not my rookie of the year just because of about 2 months of a span, really, of great basketball.
Yeah, it's crazy that the Thunder, not everybody, but there are people who feel like the Thunder had this long rebuild and it's short. I mean, I think they made the playoffs in 2020, and they're going to make it again in 2023. As of now, with the West, you win a couple games, you can be in 6th place. You lose 2 games, you can be in 11th place. But as of right now, recording time, they are in the play-in game. And you have to take account for Jalen's role on a team that is basically a playoff team. Unfortunately, Orlando got off to such a terrible start. I think if you go from like December 1st to now, they're a playoff team. I think as of they're not too far from the Pacers. I think they were a half game behind, but Chicago's been winning, so it'll be almost tough for Orlando. It'll be pretty tough for Orlando to get into the 10th spot. But Markelle Fultz has really made a crazy impact for Orlando. All right, let's talk about Mathurin. Mathurin got off to a hot start, like scorching hot start, and he has since cooled off. Share your thoughts on Mathurin. Do you think the scouting reports caught up to him? Do you think it was the rookie wall? Halliburton missing games. What do you think is the reason why he still had a really good year, but his numbers have tailed off some?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 3-point percentage is definitely the one that's dropped off, and that's a couple of things. I mean, teams are closing out a little bit harder. Halliburton being hurt didn't do him any favors. But I think it's a little bit of all of it, right? I mean, it's hard for guys to go from a 35 game season to 82. I mean, that's almost triple. So that's a lot. And I think, that consecutive action, it caught up to him. The scouting report, like you said, caught up to him. And then what really piled on for him, where it would have been, damage would have been done, but it escalated the damage is just that Halliburton was out. And don't get me wrong, Andrew Nembhard has been great. I think he should be all rookie too. But I think just not having borderline elite point guard, an all-star point guard, and Tyrese Halliburton is the biggest one.
Yeah, let's talk about Nembhard. He has really surprised people. And I thought he had a really good combine. And I remember tweeting out that there are some people that thought he could end up being a first-round pick. And now, based off of how he's played, the Pacers definitely got first-round value for him. Are you surprised with how well he's played, or even how aggressive he's been as far as looking for a shot? Because that wasn't his thing at Gonzaga or Florida. He was the guy that I feel like in college, no matter what, you can pencil him in for 9 points, 5 assists every single night. I thought he was like the most consistent guy in college basketball the last couple of years. He didn't have big 20-point games and didn't have like low scoring games. It was just always consistently like 9 points. But now, the last I looked, he had a stretch where he was averaging like 19 a game with Halliburton out. So has he caught you by surprise?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I wish my big regret for Andrew Nembhard is when he was at Florida after that first year, I was a big fan. And then I started thinking, he's just Kendall Marshall. And that's just not what he was, because I was like, if he can't shoot, I never really adjusted my scouting report his first senior year, when last year he shot 38% from three. He had like 87 or 85% from the line. I just didn't adjust to that. And I really did not expect his shooting to be this crisp, this good, or this early. And, it's not like great, but relative to where it was even 2 years ago, it's just worlds better. And so in a way, I should have seen it coming, but also this good, this quick, and this much volume is a bit surprising. I think a lot of it has to do with how good of a coach he has for his mold, and Rick Carlisle. We've seen these guys for Rick Carlisle that, heady players with great basketball IQ. They understand the next play before it happens. Good playmaker, good shooter, and just does his business, doesn't make mistakes. Those guys mesh with Rick Carlisle, and I think Carlisle's been able to draw up a system that really helps Nembhard too, which makes it even better for him.
All right, when we return, I want to get your thoughts on his brother, even though we're talking about the rookies, but how Andrew's success may play a role in Ryan's draft stock, who has pretty much put himself in position to possibly be drafted in 2023. Stay tuned. All right, last segment, we left off talking about Andrew Nembhard and his brother Ryan Nembhard. And Ryan caught my attention in the Maui Invitational, which was like Anthony Black coming out party. But I thought Ryan played really, really well in those games. I want to say he had 25 against Arizona and 20 against Arkansas, or maybe it's other way around, but I think he had over 40 points in 2 games. Had a solid season. Then he had a big game in the NCAA tournament. He's a little bit smaller than his brother. What do you think about Ryan, and has Andrew's success made you give Ryan a little bit of a boost?
Yeah, I'm not big on, the siblings kind of stuff. I think he's a fine shooter. Nothing really like stands out for me in that regard. What worries me is that he's small and he doesn't finish at the rim. I think there's other small guards I would gamble on before him. I worry about the offense translating to the NBA. I think that those few inches of difference between him and Andrew were just a little bit too much for me.
I think he's going to be fine. I think that he might be like Andrew. He might have more scoring than he's able to show, even though he has shown that he's a pretty good scorer in college. Has 4 other guys on his team that I think are going to at least see the NBA at some point in their career. Playing with Kalkbrenner and Arthur Kaluma, I can't say there's a lot of spacing for him at the 4 and 5 where he can get a lot of clean looks. I think he's going to be fine. I talked to a scout recently, and he loves him. He said, this was his comparison. He said that he thinks Ryan Nembhard can play the Jose Alvarado role, a guy that comes in off the bench, picks up, and is a pest. But he thinks that Ryan could be better than Alvarado because he could run a team. And the scout mentioned that New Orleans loves Alvarado, but they hate the fact that he does not know how to run a team. And they like Ryan. So let's talk about Jabari Smith. Jabari got off to a brutal start, has started to turn the corner as of late, and just wanted to hear your thoughts on Jabari. Is he finally just kind of coming along, or is it a situation that we see every year in mid-March, late March, April, where rookies just have this big bump? I know Rockets fans are probably not going to like this, but I remember at this time last year, Jalen Green had some huge games at the end of the year. I want to say he had some 30-point games, maybe a 40-point game or something like that. And not saying that Jalen hasn't had a successful sophomore season, but I don't think it's been as good as people thought. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of different factors around it with Houston, who finally decided to bring in a veteran with 10 games left in the year. But what are your thoughts on Jabari's second half of the season?
Yeah, I do actually think Jalen Green did get better this year. It just got minimized just by the fact that the Houston situation is not good. Their coaching is bad. They don't have a point guard. Everybody's kind of filling in that role, and Jabari Smith has suffered because of that. For me, I don't see this. I see it a little bit. Yes, mid-March, guys get going. but he's been really good. There's been very real flashes, especially this month. I mean, even Monday night, he just had 6 assists. He had 14 points, 11 rebounds. Like things like that aren't an accident. So for me, I think there's enough real flashes. All it is with him, like if he was the guy who shot 35% from three, we wouldn't be talking about him as that disappointing. It'd be, we wish we saw more, but he wasn't outright bad. Like there were times this year where he was outright bad. I would say really, if I'm not mistaken, it was like December, November were really rough. And I think this is just a correction for that. I think if he had a real point guard in Houston, we would be talking about a 3-and-D power forward that actually isn't that bad. He just needs a better situation.
Is his best position going forward at the 5?
It might be, which makes it hard because so is Şengün.
And if they win the lottery,
well, that solves it.
Well, if they win the lottery, then he's not going to play the 5. Well, I don't know, maybe. I mean, Victor Wembanyama we're talking about. I think he's good enough to where you can kind of put him in different spots all over the floor.
Any number in that positions.
In the positions
1 through 5.
Keegan Murray, he is. I mean, he's always been quiet. His game is quiet, but he is on a team that is going to have home court advantage in the West. The Sacramento Kings are going to have home court advantage. He's been solid 12 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Has he exceeded expectations, or is he about right where you thought he would be?
For me, he met them. I had high expectations. If you remember, if you're a very devoted listener and remember my conversations from August, I had said, what I really liked about him, it's hard to analyze summer league, but there was one takeaway I truly had, which was Keegan Murray's going to be able to play many roles and do all of those roles well. He's never going to be a guy who, all right, you have to score 15 points. You have to just shoot the 3, whatever. Like he can adapt to all these different things. Or excuse me, I said that wrong. You don't have to do all of these things at once. You don't need to play defense to like get to the rim, shoot, pass, all of them on the same night. Just do it different nights as other things are coming. Harrison Barnes is hitting the 3. Boom. All right, play defense, hit the occasional shot when you're asked to. He has done everything he's asked to, and he's a big part of why the Sacramento Kings are going to their first playoffs in 20 years, 19 years, whatever it's been. The longest drought, if I'm not mistaken, in North American sports. So shout out to them. Keegan Murray has been very good on both ends of the floor. He's done everything he's asked him to do. We're looking at a guy growing into a great glue guy and something that every great team needs.
Yeah, 41% from 3, 6 attempts per game. Another guy that has a brother that's coming up in the 2023 class. And I wonder how his success will play a role in where his brother gets drafted. All right, let's talk about Jaden Ivey. There are some people that are kind of mixed with on their thoughts about his season. Actually, let's talk about Ivey and Jalen Duren. What have you thought about Detroit's their roster construction is really weird. What have you thought about those two guys?
I really like Jalen Duren. I think he's somebody who I wish I had evaluated him as the youngest player in the draft rather than like an average aged center, because he is so advanced for what he does. I think he can defend the rim so well, and he's so raw at the same time. He just finds himself in the right spots at the right time, and it's not an accident either. He's just very fluid. I think he's a great glue guy. He's everything Detroit needs as that big man. So I really like him. Jaden Ivey, I think there's some left to be desired from him. It feels like that out of control he played with, the pace at Purdue, hasn't been a good thing in the NBA, and the shot just isn't there. But the good news for him is it feels just like a normal, he's not as good as a rookie. There's literally no reason to worry, I don't think. He doesn't have if I'm not mistaken, his numbers are pretty similar to, say, De'Aaron Fox as a rookie. Like they're not far off across the board. I think that's something he's got going for him, and De'Aaron Fox has obviously turned out fine. Just had his first All-Star appearance. I think Ivey will be good. I think the big telling for him is what happens if the Pistons get number 2, because I think if they have Scoot and Cade, I really do think Ivey would be the odd man out on that one. And they can't, and maybe they take Brandon Miller, but who knows? I think that'll be an interesting thing. It'll say a lot about where the Pistons stand on Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, I think it's just too early to give up on him, especially for an unknown. All right, let's talk about Shaedon Sharpe, a guy who I think should be playing more minutes. I mean, it was pretty obvious to me as a Blazers fan that this season was not going anywhere even like weeks ago. But I was shocked that they just threw Cam Reddish into the starting lineup at the time ahead of Shaedon Sharpe. I mean, like, to me, it just makes absolutely no sense. You got a guy, and I'm not a big Cam Reddish guy, and I admit that. If I could be a little bit biased. But you got a guy he's young and he's very talented. He's on his third team. But I just don't understand the reason to just put him ahead of Shaedon Sharpe, who is obviously, at least in my opinion, should be like untouchable in Portland's future.
Yep.
And I don't know if they're bringing him along slow. I don't know. So the last few games where they've given him an opportunity to start and play more, he has shown that dude is really, really gifted. What have you thought about Shaedon Sharpe?
Yeah, so first, just some context on the Cam Reddish stuff. I think this is the case, at least. Mike Schmitz, who is now the assistant GM in Portland, was with Draft Express for several years. I mean, think over a decade. And one of his absolute favorite guys in 2019 was Cam Reddish. I think that could be in play there. Just kind of wanting to see what they got ahead of free agency. But Shaedon Sharpe, like you said, he should be absolutely untouchable. I mean, if Damian Lillard is moved on, obviously Anthony Simons will have the keys to the franchise, but after him, it's Shaedon Sharpe. This is a guy who was the number one recruit for what would have been this draft class. And I think he's somebody who he's already being asked to guard the best player on opponents on defense. And he's doing very well on offense, finding ways just to get to the basket. The shot, it's not great, but again, kind of, I mean, actually, I misread the numbers. He's shooting 36% from three. Like, that's actually way better than I thought. He's starting to look like, hey, it really might hit. Portland's been a great spot for development for guys just in general. I don't think Shaedon Sharpe's going to be any different.
Yeah, man, he should play more. I mean, he's shooting 48% from the floor. So you got 48, 36, the 68, 69% from the free throw line could be a better indicator of his overall touch. But I just don't understand why he's not playing, or why he's only started 8 games and why he's only playing 20 minutes per game. Again, I thought Portland's season was pretty much over but even by All-Star break. He should be playing 30 minutes per game. And now Reddish isn't even starting the last few games. They're starting Trenton Watford over him. Somebody told me, NBA scouts told me, that they think that Portland is, with Cam being a free agent, they don't want him to play too well because they think that it could raise his price. But then somebody else had mentioned that he is who he is. He's an athletic guy. He's a tease. He's someone that has all these tools, and he's going to shoot. If he takes 10 shots, 6 of them are going to be three-pointers, and he's about a league average shooter from three. All right, let's talk about Jeremy Sochan. So, a guy that you weren't too high on, and I guess it's safe to say that he has exceeded your expectations. So let's just bring it back. At this time a year ago, you were pro Kendall Brown. You're Jeremy Sochan.
Dunk on me harder.
What, I mean, we all have these, but what do you think is the difference between those two now as compared to where you were a year ago?
I don't know what the behind the scenes work ethic is, but I mean, like, Jeremy Sochan has done publicly, he has taken embarrassing routes to get better at shooting, and he doesn't care as long as he gets the results. Like, he is very driven. I think it helps that he is at the right spot. And again, none of this has to do with Kendall Brown, just kind of praising Sochan is just, I mean, that one-hand free throw, like, it works. He knows it's not pretty. He knows it's not what any other NBA player really does, but he doesn't care because he's actually not a bad free throw shooter. So I think for him, the work ethic plus the spot he's in, probably for one of the best spots for a player like him, an intelligent, hardworking Swiss Army knife, it's a good spot for him. His offense has been better than I thought it would be, to be completely honest. That's where obviously, like, everything has exceeded expectations. The defense I always knew was going to be good. I just really thought he was going to be not good on offense. 45% from the field on 11 points a game with 2.5 assists. Like, that's really good for a rookie, especially when you consider that's a forward.
Now the shooting has been bad. It's been worse than
Yeah.
I thought.
Oh, yeah.
24% from three on 2 attempts per game. So we know exactly what he's going to be doing this offseason. And yeah, it's just weird, man. Like coming into last season, I had at one point I had Kendall Brown as a top 10 guy. Jeremy was kind of rising, and I mean, Jeremy has scored probably more points if they played tonight, more points tonight than Kendall Brown has scored all year. If you had to take a wild guess, like why do you think he just hasn't been given the opportunity?
I really don't know. I think I need to pull up his G League stats to verify this, but I just don't think he's been shooting enough. He's had a few chances, but it's been a little bit overwhelming for him in the NBA. Yeah, just looking at the G League stats, 29% from three, it's just not going to do it. And while he is getting assists and he's getting other stats, it's just you got to be able to shoot, and he looked lost a lot of the time out there. So that's been worrisome.
Yeah, there's been a few other rookies that I think have made an impact, but the guy that has probably been the biggest surprise is, I got to say his name slow, so I make sure I get it right.
Not who I think it is.
Walker Kessler.
Okay.
Do you think he's going to be first team all rookie?
Oh, yeah. No, he fully deserves it. And that's coming from the number one Walker Kessler hater. Like, I got to redo. I'm changing my entire approach after what I did in 2022. I missed so hard on so many guys. But yeah, Walker Kessler has been absolutely great. He's been a phenomenal rim protector. He's already, like, forget that he's a rookie. He's an above average rim protector already and has a lot of room to improve. So that should be scary for the league. The block percentage has translated. The offense at the rim has translated. He's not a shooter. That was a big part of why I was down on him. I was like, well, he's not going to be able to shoot in there, and I asked him to. They don't care that he can't shoot. So it's been really good to hear that he's been just so good.
Yeah, I think next year you're going to start seeing teams pull him away from the rim. And that's going to be the game plan against him. If I'm Donovan Clingan, I'm looking at Walker Kessler. Say it right. I'm looking at him and I'm like, you know what? I may need to go transfer to another school because I think Adamo Sonova comes back. Go to another school, somewhere where I can start, play 30 minutes per game. Going to be a first round pick. I think they're very similar. I actually think Clingan moves a little bit better than Kessler. That's just my opinion. Well, thank you so much. That wraps up this episode. Big shout out to each and every person that made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, please check out Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman, and we are out.